now?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks everyone that's joined us so far. We're just going to begin in another minute or so, just leaving another few minutes for more people to join.
Okay.
Great. Okay, well, we'll begin then now. So good morning, everyone, or good afternoon if you're joining us from Spain. And on behalf of the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in the UK, I'd like to give you a very warm welcome to today's webinar, which is on the topic of keeping remote teams engaged during and beyond the coronavirus pandemic. We're thrilled to be holding this session alongside Monica Hernanz, who is leadership and Can you hear me? Oh, hi. Leadership and team coach and member of the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in the UK. And Monica is also the chair of the Human Capital Forum of the Spanish Chamber, which is a really active forum that we carry out 3 or 4 sessions of that every year. A little bit more about Monica. So she is certified by Columbia University in New York and the Academy of Executive Coaching in the UK, and specializes in the psychology of change, emotional intelligence and positive leadership, combining them to develop collaborative and innovative organizational cultures. Monica has 27 years of international business experience, the last 12 working as a coach for senior executives and leadership teams. She is also adjunct professor at IE Business School in the IMBA and EMBA programs. As a coach, she is an affiliate of the Executive Coaching Unit at IESE Business School, supporting the participants of the Executive Education programs and the faculty of the Leadership Coaching program. She is also the creator and lead tutor of the course The Art of Being a Team at EDEM Business School, combining in-classroom teaching with basketball-based team experimental learning. So following the presentation today, you're going to have the opportunity to also ask Monica any questions that you might have. So you can submit these at any point you wish during the session. You can use either the raise hand tool or the chat tool or the Q&A tool. You'll see them all at the bottom of your screen there. And yeah, so just please do get involved as much as you'd like to, send in your comments or questions. Perfect, I'll hand over to you now, Monica.
Okay, wonderful. I seem to be having a little trouble sharing my screen. I was sharing it a minute ago and now it's gone. So I would like to, first of all, if in the chat, you could just say, I mean, what we're going to be talking about is how to keep teams engaged, not just how they work and how you coordinate their workload, but also how to provide a cohesive social belonging and also how to do new thinking. So what we're going to be talking about is basically how to engage their hands. So whatever it is they're doing, their heads, whatever it is that they're thinking, and their hearts, to provide social belonging. So could you just write in the chat, out of those 3 things, you know, hands, heart, and head, which is the one that is proving most difficult in your team? Okay, so I'm going to put in the chat, which is your priority? Hands, heart, or head. Okay, and let's see the responses. Okay, Hannah. Hannah, yes. Is my presentation, am I sharing the presentation?
Not right now, no.
Okay. Because it has gone before, just 1 second. So I'm going to bring it up on screen. I've come out and then I'm coming in again. Okay, so let's just try again. Now?
No, it's still a blank screen, Monica.
Now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so I can see then from the chat. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm just going to continue on talking about the three things. So you can see my screen now, can't you? Okay. So so what we're going to be talking about is how to keep engaged, not just the workload coordination, but also how to create some rituals for new thinking, and also how to promote some social belonging. So first of all, I'm just going to start sharing with you some of the issues that I've seen over the last year or so. You know, I typically coach executives and I coach senior leadership teams. And so I'll share with you some of the things that they've told me in the confidence of coaching sessions. And the takeaway generally from all of that is that engaging teams in terms of productivity has been relatively easy once the technology was working, but that it has proven much harder to engage them in terms of thinking and in terms of belonging. So the first thing that I've observed with my clients is that the pandemic has affected them very differently, depending on their personality, whether they are extroverts or whether they are introverts. And the definition that I'm using of extraversion and introversion is the one from Myers-Briggs. You know, the MBTI personality questionnaire. And what it says is that extroverts are the people that need outside activities. They need the outside world to keep energized. And what has happened with these people, and I include myself in that, is that they've been missing a lot the variety, the social contact, and they tend to need an exchange of ideas. They loved being in a meeting and having that bounce of ideas between people in order to feel creative, in order to feel alive. And even if it used to be just the variety of going from meeting room to meeting room, that gave them much more energy than at the moment switching off one Zoom or one Teams call and going on to the next. So the extroverts have suffered much more during the whole pandemic. And even if they have taken these new ways of working in their stride, I find them much more subdued. The type of clients that are extroverts that, say, a year ago, I noticed them much more buoyant in our coaching sessions. At the moment, they are just a little bit more subdued, and they are questioning their motivation to keep on working like this. So I think that they're going to really welcome going back to the office. Whereas the introverts, well, it's been for them a bit of a discovery, because they have found in generally much easier to speak in online meetings. Also, the fact that people are much more punctual with online meetings. Before, the introverts tended to be the people who were in the meeting room before everybody else. They had prepared more and they had an agenda. But also they were the ones that talked the least, because it tended to be the extroverts who would speak first at meetings. So the fact that in a Zoom call or in a Teams call, you cannot be all talking at the same time, it means that there's a much fairer airtime distribution. They can also sound much more assertive face-to-face, and they can enjoy having more time to concentrate without the onslaught of having people coming at them all the time. So that's in terms of personality. Another thing that I've noticed with my clients in the coaching session is that they tell me that suddenly their personal life has become much more visible. So on the one hand, the living conditions of each of the people in your team, I'm sure that you've seen the differences, particularly if you don't put any of the backgrounds from Zoom. Clients tell me about the lack of boundaries between work and the rest of their lives, particularly if they don't have a family. Then they seem to be working all day, every day, weekends, and then you suddenly stop working. Maybe you have dinner, but then the computer is there, and you've got things to do. So they get back working. Also, particularly for younger people and for single people. It was the fact that they may not have an adequate place of work. Some people had to move in with their parents. Maybe they were flat sharing. So their bedrooms were good for sleeping and for not spending much time in them. But suddenly then they need to be doing their whole life in a flat share. So I think it's been much harder for people living on their own or sharing the space. And of course, people with a family, particularly mothers and fathers, that they have the small children around, is been much harder as well. And a key determinant as well has been whether you had outside access. So even though everybody has been in the same storm, is not the same if you are in a flat share, in a tiny flat share in London, than if you have a mansion or a big house with a garden in the countryside. And that can have raised maybe some resentments, or just simply realizing that you're just not in the same position as everybody else in your team. So it has affected integration, and it has made the people who are not in ideal conditions maybe feeling a little bit more isolated. And then in terms of the COVID impact, there have been people that they had themselves or people in their family ill through COVID. There may have been deaths and mourning, and also people who had any prior mental health condition that it wasn't a key determinant, but maybe at some point in their life in the past, then they've suffered from depression or from anxiety, and they were taking some medication for those things that they hadn't necessarily disclosed to the employer because it hasn't been a main thing. But suddenly being on their own with long working hours, with all the uncertainty in COVID, those things may have flared up, and they are not necessarily sharing with their managers and with the rest of the team. So it's people who are suffering, but they are not saying. In these circumstances, one analogy that I'm using more and more with team leaders, but also with team members, is that of the leader as a gardener. So I think the clients I've got who were a bit more of a controlling leader, maybe a very demanding leader, but that tended to find it hard to delegate, have suffered more during the pandemic. And what I'm working with many of them is how to be a leader more like a gardener. So the type of leader that was like a chess master, who tended to have all the answers, have the strategy, or figure it out, and always being a couple of steps ahead, have had to really rethink their role, and they have had sometimes a bit of a crisis of identity. Like, who am I as a leader if I'm not the kind of leader who can provide all of the answers, who can control what people are doing? They have had a bit of a reckoning, because I think that they didn't fully trust that people were going to work really well from home or in a remote way, and they found that they do. So then the transformation is from being a very hands-on controlling leader, inspiring, but also a little bit controlling, to be more of a gardener that is trying to create the right environment. So it's trying to make sure that people have what they need. If there were plants, that they have the right sun and air and soil, So for the workers to make sure that they've got the information they need, the support they need, but letting them get on with it. Okay, so that's a bit of a summary of what has been going on. What I'm going to do is just to plow on with the with the presentation, and then what we'll do is to have a discussion at the end. Okay, so then we're going to talk about some rituals and some ideas. You may have some of them, you may not have some of them, but the intention is that you could use these things as a bit of a checklist to see how you can improve both the workload coordination, the generation of new thinking, and also the belonging. So let's talk about the workload coordination. Okay, so let's see if you have these rituals. It is important for workload coordination that you have some sort of chat and that you are not too dependent on video call after video call and also on email. The most successful teams that I've been working with in the last year, they use something like the chat on Microsoft Teams, or they use Slack. They use an alternative channel to email to have constant communication so that you can see at a glance what people in your team are working on, and that you can update what you're doing without necessarily being connected at the same time. So for instance, when I'm working with people who are working on a project where not everybody is there 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, then it really helps to have the trail of information in Slack or in the chat in Teams. And then whenever people get onto the project, then they can see whether they are available or not available. They can say, they can put the do not disturb. But the important thing is that you keep a trail of information and that you know who is connected at the moment and who isn't connected, and that you are not relying on email for that. Another very important ritual is to have a daily and weekly catch-up. I mean, the daily catch-up, again, I think it can be through a Zoom, but it can be through other tools. Like there's a tool called DailyBot, where you just say what you're working on every day, and then the manager receives that information every day. And then during the team, you can do more of the social cohesion. I also really recommend that you have a weekly catch-up that lasts just a little bit longer, and is very, very important than when you are doing those catch-ups that everybody has their video on. In terms of the video calls, I really recommend that you don't have more than 6 people, that everybody has got the video on. And if you need to update or do a catch-up with more than 6 people, then it's much better that you record yourself as the leader or maybe as a team member in something that you need everybody to know, and you just disseminate that video, and you then discuss it in smaller groups, in a maximum of 6. I mean, I've seen some clients of mine that they suddenly have got 18 people, 20 people logged into a meeting. They are doing their emails at the same time, and really it's a little bit of a waste of time. So try to limit the calls to something that is easy for people to participate and contribute. Okay, so those are some of the basic rituals that you should have for workload coordination. And I think also the easier the integration of those meetings and those tools, for instance, in Microsoft Teams, is good because you can have the chat, you can have the projects, you can have the sharing information all in one go. Otherwise, you just create your own mix with a mixture of maybe Zoom or Google Meet, with Slack, with Asana, with Basecamp. Then you can create your own mixture. All right, then let's talk about the new thinking. Some of the things that that my clients have mentioned to me, and that also that I have observed with the teams that I'm doing team coaching to them, is that there are a lot of meetings. People are constantly on Zoom or on Teams, one after the other, but there isn't a lot of new thinking generated. So the question that I would pose to you is, do you have time to really think individually and collectively? And here are some ideas. So one idea, first of all, is to leave one period, at least one period a day, but if you can, two, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, when nobody's connecting. So calls are prohibited on those time slots, and notifications are muted. And then, let's say that you say in your team that between 9 and 10 and between 3 and 4 every day, everybody's going to be working and concentrating. And then you enforce the respect for those times. And this ability to really being able to concentrate is an ability that needs to be learned and needs to be nurtured. You cannot just go from meeting to meeting and just do it in quick slots of 5 minutes at a time or 10 minutes at a time. Something else that I would suggest is to creating a book club. And that's something that we're going to see in the social belonging. And I would recommend that you start the book club with Cal Newport's Deep Work book. Okay. Another important ritual is that at the end of each meeting, you actually carve out some new thinking time. And even that you do a quick assessment at the end of the meeting. Okay, how much of what we have discussed in this meeting has been new ideas, new learning, new thinking, and how much has it been just sharing of information? And as a guideline, at least 10 to 15% of the time in the meeting should have been devoted to promoting more thinking. This new thinking is better done in smaller groups. So that's why if you're doing Zoom or you're doing Teams, then you break them up into breakout groups, and you say, well, okay, this thing that we've been talking about, these new ideas that we've heard from one of the team members, let's just have a think of how we can implement them. And then you go into the breakout groups, and then you do a final round at the end of something that everybody takes away. This is a technique or an activity that normally team coaches, we do all the time, or team facilitators. And it's really good to say, well, so far, how is it so far? What do we think about it? Let's generate some new learning, and then let's do a final round where everybody can say what they take away. Another idea is that to promote new thinking, and particularly if you're seeing things all the time on Zoom or on video calls, and you're just sharing a lot of PowerPoint documents, and you cannot see people face to face, there can be quite a lot of misunderstandings. And also, normally PowerPoint is something that is very good once all the thinking and all the proposals have been created, but maybe as a tool for creating the proposals, so as a work in progress, narrative writing is better. It has proven to be better. For instance, and is used more and more by companies. Amazon was a pioneer in that. Normally, when they share documents internally, they don't use PowerPoint. What they use is Word. But also, for those of you that went to university and had to create essays, you will remember that in order to write, you really need to structure your thinking first. It's much easier to maybe go into PowerPoint and start playing around with images and with templates. Whereas when you're on a Word document, you really need to think about the structure of the document. So I would encourage that until an idea is fully fleshed out, that you share and communicate in Word, and you can be working on those documents during that deep work time that you are carving out. And let's say at the end of the week, then you can share the documents. If you have Microsoft Teams, then you can actually be collaborating in the same document, or if you have Google Docs, if you're in the Google environment as well. So there's only one version of the document and everybody is contributing to it. Okay, and then in terms of the heart, so how to improve the social belonging. Let's have a look at the rituals that you can have there. So these rituals, oops, sorry, it has just taken me away. Oh, it has just taken me away. But what I will do then is just to tell you, Hannah, are you there?
Yep.
Okay. Can you now see me in full screen?
I can indeed, yes.
Okay, wonderful. I just seem to have lost the last page of the presentation. So let me tell you what it said. So
Okay.
it was going to say to have three rituals. So the first one is to have meetings that are purely for social reasons. They don't have to be very long, but let's say once a week, at least have a quarter of an hour or half an hour when you do coffee. And actually, maybe everybody has their favorite drink. You can also do it the last thing on a Friday, so to kind of sign off for the week, and then the drink could even be alcoholic. So people could have their glass of wine or their soda or their gin and tonic, and whatever it is, if it's done obviously on a Friday at 6 o'clock, but if it's done on a Monday, on a Tuesday, then people bring their favorite coffee. And the ritual in many places is called Zika, which is a Swedish word for getting together and chatting. And then if you are the team leader, then what I would propose is that you've got some sort of icebreaker so that people talk about, okay, do you remember what was your first week in the company like? Or can you tell us something that you're watching at the moment? Which series are you watching or enjoying at the moment? Or which book are you reading? What was that moment where you discovered your vocation? And what I can do, if you want to, is when I share this presentation with you with a list of attendees, I can also send you a list of icebreakers that you could use for that weekly coffee meeting. Okay, so that's number one. So just having, even if it's just 15 minutes to half an hour of a purely social meeting. I have also seen some of my clients that they did food delivery to everybody in their team. So maybe they send them breakfast and then everybody receives the package with their food at the same time and they share it together. So that's also something else that can be done. And actually many restaurants have got the breakfast package or the lunch package. And if you think about it, with all the money that the companies and your team is saving on office space and on many other things that companies used to spend before, you know, I'm sure that part of the budget can go to occasionally once a week or once a month, then everybody can share a breakfast or a lunch. Okay. Then the second thing is go outside. I mean, don't have all the meetings inside. And I don't mean, obviously, you need to follow all the regulations, but one tip that some of my clients are doing is that they go out for a walk individually. So let's say it's time for you to have your one-to-one with your manager. Instead of doing it through Zoom and to avoid the screen fatigue, you both go out and you are talking on the phone. So you are just having just a voice-only conversation, but you are both going out and getting outside and walking, and you are getting some fresh air and you're getting some sun. And also sometimes not having the camera can actually be a little bit more intimate. So I think every manager could very easily schedule a time in their diary every day where they are going out for an hour, and maybe they are having 2 or 3 one-to-ones with one person in their team, so that throughout the week they have managed to speak to everybody. And then the third idea is to gradually start going back to the office or meeting outside now the good weather is coming. So schedule 1 day a week where they say, well, okay, say on Fridays at 11 o'clock, we are everybody who can be face-to-face, let's all meet face-to-face. And maybe you meet in an open air cafe outside of your traditional office, or you start going back to the office and you just plan between you just plan some time where you are all going to be together, and that can be, and those times can be gradually extended as the time approaches to being back to the office. And what I would recommend is that you use that time specifically where you are beginning to meet face to face, even though you are still maintaining the social distance and the masks and everything. You devote that time specifically to plan how your return to work, returned to face-to-face work is going to be like, and to start sharing, okay, who would like to keep on being remote? What is the ideal number of days or times to be working remotely, and just coordinating your team so that you've got a plan for going back to work. Okay, so that in a nutshell is all. I just wanted to make sure that we've got time. We've got time for you to ask me questions, and also to do a little bit of sharing here. So in a nutshell, you were saying, most people were saying that the head and the heart were the most important things, and that actually is consistent with studies that have been done during last year, that the productivity and the workload coordination has been working pretty well, but that is the new thing in the head and the heart that is the most important thing. Okay, so let's just go back to the chat and keep the questions coming. So what questions do you have for me?
Thank you, Monica, so much for that fantastic presentation. Some really good, helpful ideas for us all to take away there. Just to apologise, my internet is being a bit worrying, so I'm just going to keep my camera off so that it doesn't disrupt the flow of the session. So apologies for that, just to be safer, I think. So yeah, as Monica said, please, if you have any questions for her about anything she's spoken about, please do tune in with those now. So also, as I said at the beginning, there's the raise hand tool, the chat tool, and the Q&A tool.
Yeah. So Juan is asking, how do you encourage cameras on while not being too intrusive? Okay, yeah, great question. Great question. I would simply just not give it as an option. And I think if you follow my recommendation to have not more than 6 people in the meeting, then it's pretty obvious that people have to have their cameras on. What you could say is to say, look, I know that we've got different living agreements and different situations. Encourage them. I mean, sometimes if you make corporate backgrounds available in Zoom, then sometimes people are more willing to put the camera, because I mean, I found that people, when they don't want to put the camera on, it could be because they could be a little bit ashamed of what they have going on in the background. So the corporate backgrounds help. Also, something that you could do is to make it into some kind of contest where you could say, okay, let's find groovy or creative Zoom backgrounds. And at the moment, if you just Google Zoom backgrounds, you will find that lots of people are doing them. For instance, you can go to the National Trust, and in the National Trust, they've created Zoom backgrounds from the properties from the National Trust. You've got backgrounds from cartoons, from series. So actually, you could use them for social cohesion. And let's say, okay, next meeting, everybody's going to have their cameras on, and everybody is going to show a very creative background. And actually, the creative background, it can be any photos. So I've seen people saying, okay, during next meeting, let's all have as a background a photo of one of our hobbies. So then you get, for instance, you get Monica, and I like hiking, for instance. So I would have as my background a landscape of one of my hiking trips. And then somebody who likes sailing would have as a background from one of their sailing or their boat or a sailing holiday. And that way, it's a way that you encourage the interactions to be a little bit more personal. And then Juan, if you are the team leader, I think that it is within your right to say, from now on, we are all going to have the cameras on. And also, if somebody has got a technical issue, then maybe before the meeting, you could tell them a day before or 2 days before, look, we are all going to have our cameras on. So if your computer hasn't got the camera, please let me know and we will send you a camera. I mean, a webcam is about 30 pounds or 30 euros. So, you could just provide it from them and you send them through Amazon. I mean, it's something that you can order it today and they have it tomorrow. And then everybody has no excuse to have the webcam. So you could just provide with the webcams if it's a technical issue, provide IT support to make sure that it's properly connected. And then if it's maybe a social reluctance or shame, then to make it into a feature to have the Zoom backgrounds. Okay, Juan, does that help? Maybe just drop me in the chat. Okay, Juan, whenever you can, just write if that has answered your question or if you want a little bit more. Let's now, yeah, it says it does help. Wonderful. Let's go to another one. So another question says, beside the icebreakers, how do you encourage questions and contributions in video call? How do you balance between extroverts and introverts? Should you ask introverts directly to contribute, or that would be too intrusive again? No, I think that you can ask introverts to contribute. Two things that you can do there. One is the use of rounds with time allocated to them. So that's why, say you've presented a new proposal, a new ideas, then, and let's say that you have 5 people in the team. Okay, so then you announce, right, we're now going to devote 10 minutes to discussing that. There's 5 of us, so we've got each 2 minutes to talk. And actually, if you are the meeting host, you keep the timings, or you appoint someone from the meeting to keep the timings. And then everybody who speaks has got a couple of minutes, and that is a round. And then you make sure that everybody has got the same airtime. And yeah, so that will equalize the airtimes between the extroverts and the introverts. Another way that you can do is to split them in breakout groups. So you just simply say, we're going to spend the next 5 minutes debating it. So I'm going to put you into breakouts of 2 people or 3 people, and then they definitely need to speak to one another. So, and in fact, I do want to leave time. I want to leave 10 minutes at the end so that we do precisely that here. And we do a little bit of networking at the end, because when we were doing the face-to-face meetings, there was always the coffee at the end of the networking, and in the virtual virtual ones, we think it's important that you also have got time to talk. So those would be the two things I would recommend. Making it time and making it explicit. We're going to be spending the next 10 minutes discussing this. So 2 minutes per person or 1 minute per person, and also put them in breakout group rooms. Okay. Then we've got, okay, the next one. The next question I've got, what do you think of the general shift towards remote work and even digital nomadism? What will it mean to the future of workplaces? Well, great question. I mean, just yesterday I was looking at, here in Spain, for instance, the Canary Islands and Malaga are positioning themselves to attract the digital nomads. And also in several countries, Iceland is doing this. Iceland, I think parts of Australia as well, parts of Greece. They are positioning themselves saying, well, okay, if you've got good weather and we've got good internet connections and the cost of living is much lower, why not attract people who have proven during the pandemic that they can work from anywhere? So I've noticed three things during this time. I've noticed one, that everybody is much more informal than before. I mean, before the pandemic, I had two types of clients. I had the clients that still were dressed in the jacket. I mean, I didn't know who I was going to find today, so I have put on a jacket, but actually most of the time when I'm working, such as I presume yourselves, when I'm working from home, you know, I'm with a jumper or I'm with a t-shirt or I'm with a blouse. You know, if I'm doing coaching for senior people, I may put more of a blouse than a t-shirt. But I have found generally that the dress code, the use of makeup, the general tone of the conversation has come leaps and bounds. Before the pandemic, I used to have two sets of clients. The ones more in the more creative digital space that were already, you know, they were wearing jeans to work, like smart jeans, but they certainly were not wearing suits and ties and anything like that. And the ones who did, because I've got a lot of clients in banking, I used to get the both worlds, but still a lot of people in banking wearing ties and suits. And actually, if you walk through London, and you used to work through London pre-pandemic, you still saw a lot of people in traditional business clothing. Now the pandemic, I think everybody has gone more towards the tech companies, the more fintech, and also I think that the millennials and the Generation Z are really paving the way. So that is one of the changes that I've definitely seen, that I think we are not going to see a return to the suit and the jacket and the tie, probably not. The second thing that I've seen is that some of my senior clients that were initially very wary of remote working, and I think that tends to apply more to the Spanish leaders than the British leaders. I think that because commuting in the UK it takes so long and people are very used to very long commutes. I think that most teams were already used to people working from home maybe 1 or 2 days a week. But for those of you who work for Spanish companies, you know that many of them just had never done that. And there was a level of mistrust. But once that mistrust, people, leaders who used to mistrust have had no other option than to trust. And also that everybody has been forced to adapt and take on the technology. So now there's no excuse. Everybody has got the same technology. Everybody can work from home. Everybody has gone over the hump of figuring out how to do this. I really think I've seen that reflected in, first of all, the clients I've got in human resources. They are considering, it has opened up their hiring practices much more, because maybe fits for a role in London. Before they were only looking at the UK, and now they are looking all over. So I think it's opening up lots of opportunities for jobs, and also to just look at talent anywhere. Also, I think people are considering becoming a digital nomad, as we were discussing. And I think all the time that people have been inside has made them think, well, okay, if I'm going to have to work a lot from home, then I don't want to be in a tiny flat in London. You know, I'm going to the Canary Islands, or I'm going whatever. And I would, if that's something that is appealable to you, I would certainly look at, I mean, if you just Google it, Google passport for digital nomads. And for instance, in Iceland, they have made special visas to stay for longer than 3 months, because when you were going as a tourist, you could only stay for 3 months. So they are extending it. And then if you Google Malaga digital nomads, or Tenerife digital nomads, then you will see that that is something that is happening right now. So also for your companies, you could be hiring people there. Okay, let's have a look. Again, if it was you who asked that, question, please write in the chat if you feel that I have answered it. Now, I've got another one. What do you think about the idea of gamification as a method for increasing employee engagement? I think it's a really good one. I mean, for those of you who don't know what gamification is that whatever the people are working on, you turn it into a competition. So you turn it into a game, so that at the end of the week, if you think of the video games, normally when you play video games, then you get a chart. So you get a chart that tells you the position that you're in, who are the top 3. And also in a video game, you may get specific challenges for the week. So in terms of your teams, when you use gamification, you set them a challenge per week or per month. So let's say if it's a sales team, then you say, well, the challenge is to do at least X number of cold calls this week, or you can set up a well-being challenge, and you say, well, let's set up a challenge to at least get outside half an hour per day, or you can set up a challenge to accumulate X number of minutes of exercise a week. So you can set up, it can be work related, or it can be well-being related, or it can be social related. So it can be, right, let's make sure that this week everybody has had at least a couple of one-to-one conversations with someone in your team. I've seen in some teams where they have set up a buddy system. Do you remember when I mentioned before that people may have had some mental health conditions, so that you don't know really to what extent people are struggling, and that's not going to come up in a normal team meeting, but it may come in a face-to-face conversation that is confidential. So some of my clients have set up a buddy system, like a pandemic or a COVID buddy, that is someone that you choose to have a closer communication on one-to-one. So again, in the gamification that you could see, have you at least had one conversation with your buddy or with someone on a confidential basis? Okay, let's see another question. Online meetings do not allow the informal chat before and after the meeting, where many times we come up with brilliant ideas or new business projects. How could we create those spaces or moments remotely? Well, I would specifically carve out that time. I mean, I think if automatically you are putting in your meetings are 1 hour, and I know that changes, because in some organizations they're recommending that meetings are 15 minutes or 50 minutes. The meetings are 40, 45, 50 minutes, so that you get at least 5, 10 or 15 minutes in between meetings. But okay, whatever is the usual allocation when you go into your calendar, let's, for the sake of ease, let's just say it's an hour, okay? So if it's an hour, what you do is you just carve out the last 10 minutes and you make sure that you've got a hard stop, and you tell them why it's important. You say, before we used to have the after meeting, so let's bring the after meeting into the meeting, and let's make sure that in the last 10 minutes we've got a round. And do you remember when I was mentioning to Juan earlier how you do rounds? So you basically see the time that you've got available. So if it is 10 minutes and there's 5 of you or 6 of you, you simply allocate the time and you do a round, or sharing ideas, or you put people in breakout rooms, and you just make sure that you are devoting the time. Also, you could create a meeting once a week, where it's a kind of a wash up of the whole week. Let's say, okay, let's remind ourselves everything that we've done this week, and let's have a repository of new ideas that we didn't know what to do with them. So it would be like a repository of inspiration. And that way, if you know Mural, I'm just going to put it in the chat. If you go to Mural or to Miro boards, they've got fantastic templates. They've got fantastic templates to do that. I mean, in fact, I'm going to try and go to, are you familiar with these tools? It's mural.co. Going to share it with you. Okay, can you now see my screen? So this is mural.co. We use it a lot in consulting and in coaching, and you can have all the team connected and you can be all collaborating in the same document. So I would do, and they've got lots of templates for meetings and workshops, for strategy and planning, for brainstorming. So for instance, if we go to one of the templates for brainstorming, if you go to templates, you see you've got roadmaps, you've got brainstorming, time machine, really big idea sketchpad. You can have a canvas, from the digital, from design thinking, you could have the canvas model. So you see you've got tons and tons of templates. So what I would recommend, Nerea, is that you, at least once a week, you can create a meeting that is all about capturing all the ideas that have been happening throughout the week that people haven't had a chance to share them. So you can capture them like this, or either that, or in the meeting that you already have, you carve out 15 minutes to do this, or at the very, very minimum, even if you are with very low technology, just simply do a round with the minutes. Okay, and the other one, so that is Mural, and the other one I wanted to show you is the Miro board. That's Miro, well, Miro in Spanish, Miro. It's kind of the same thing. This is a Miro board, and this is miro.com. So you've got the possibility again of being sharing and collaborating at the same time. Lots of templates. You can have a mind map, a customer journey, a retrospective, or just simply a brainstorming session with sticky notes. Okay, does that help? There is one more question in the Q&A for after I finish. Okay, where is the question? because I think we've got about 3 minutes left. So
I can read it out, Monica, if you like.
yeah, please do.
Yeah, perfect. So Chen Chao says from Del Canto Chamber, she says, thanks, Monica. I really liked your presentation. What would be your recommendations for work meetings in terms of criteria around who to invite in order to keep the meetings lean? Most of our regular work meetings have over 6 and sometimes are around 15 people or more.
Okay, well then I wouldn't call it a meeting then. What I would do is to really separate and split and say, well, okay, we're going to have an information session, and then you could have 50 or even 100. But you make it very clear, okay, in this session, is going to be very much one way, or maybe there's one presenter or 2 or 3 presenters, and we're just simply communicating information. You make sure that you record those sessions and that those sessions are available for keeping referring to them, so that if somebody cannot be there at that time, then they can listen to their recording afterwards. But then you have a collaboration meeting, and that's when I would ensure that you have 6 or groups of 6. So even if you've got a team that is many more people, let's say that you have a team that is 18 people, I would still have 3 groups of 6 collaborating and sharing information, and then maybe having a spokesperson for each of those teams, and then creating a team with the 3 spokespeople. And that way, well, you can scale it to 50, to 100, to whoever you need to be. I would make those meetings much shorter. And what I would say is, okay, it's imperative that you listen to, you either attend or listen to the information session. And these are the specific questions that we want you to reflect on. So I would give them 3 questions, say, to reflect on. And then I would make it very clear that in the alternative groups where the 6 people are interacting, they are there to interact according to maybe 3 questions, and they should be providing some ideas at the end of the meeting. That way you are encouraging social interaction and also new thinking. And then those ideas get taken forward by whoever owns the initiative. Okay, does that help? Good. So yeah, just make it very clear. In here you are passive and listening, and in here you're active and communicating and collaborating. Okay, well, it's 1 o'clock. Just thank you very, very much for all your participation. Could I ask, Hannah, did you want to do any networking? I'm just not sure whether that is available now, or what is the plan?
No, Monica, as I mentioned to you before, we can't do that right in this session right now. But in future sessions we will do. But thank you so much for all of your insight that you've shared with us. I'm sorry it's a bit personal, I can't turn my camera on anymore, but thank you. It's really useful, some really useful tips and pieces of advice for everyone to take away. We really appreciate you sharing all your ideas and your insight with everyone. Thank you so much. I will be sending around a feedback survey after this, and also a link to so you can find out more about Monica and her services if you'd like to get in touch with her, and her email address as well. I'll also share the recording of this webinar, so if you would like to watch it again or share it with any of your colleagues or contacts you think will be interesting to, you can feel free to do so.
And I'll also be sending the presentation so that you can share it, and some checklist and ideas.
Brilliant. Sounds good to me. Thank you. So I'll share that this afternoon with everyone. Thank you for joining us, everyone. And thank you again, Monica.